Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, students. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, my name is Pugo from Department Economics, Faculty of Economics and Bisnis, Universitas Gadjah Mada. I will be moderating this exciting session with Ippei, Bapak Ippei Tsuruga in this Micro-Economica Talks. Yeah, I hope I spelled it carefully. Right, guys. It is an honor for me to moderate this respected event. I would like to welcome our speakers, Bapak Tsuruga. His current position now as a social protection manager at the International Labor Organization in Jakarta. Yeah. And today, he will present his work entitled Just Transition and Climate Change, the Role of Social Protection and Impacts on Workers. Bapak Ippei hold MA, Master of Arts in Poverty and Development Economics and Social Protection from University of Sussex, UK. And his research expertise are social protection, unemployment benefit, informal economy, maternity benefits, and pension system. Okay. I also welcome our discussion today, Ibu Qisha Quarina from Department of Economics, Universitas Gadjah Mada. He holds Ph.D. from University of Lancaster, United Kingdom, same United Kingdom. And his research areas is labor economics, education economics, population economics, and development economics. So welcome Pak Ippei, and I will call you Bapak here, yeah, and Ibu Qisha. Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, we structured this webinar into 3 parts. First, we have 60 minutes for presentation from Bapak Ippei, and then 30 minutes discussion from Ibu Qisha, and then lastly, Q&A session from the audience, from the students for 30 minutes. Please prepare your questions, yeah, so for the Q&A session. Without further ado, I would like to invite our speakers, Ippei, to deliver his presentation. Ippei, 60 minutes for your presentation time. The floor is yours.
Test. Oke. Selamat siang. Nama saya Ippei dari Jakarta. Saya tinggal di sini, Indonesia. But I cannot speak bahasa Indonesia much. Only about food, how to negotiate the price, that's it. So I speak English, but I hope you can understand what I say at least. Today I prepare my presentations from basic to slightly advanced topics on climate change and a just transition. But before we start, probably I need to explain what is social protection. Probably you have never heard of social protection. Jaminan sosial, bantuan sosial, probably you heard it from Kompas, but you don't probably know what it is. So I will try to explain from the basics. Yeah, okay. What is social protection? Next, okay. We say social protection usually to cover throughout your life cycle, from birth to death. That is a concept. The state, country, the government should protect their own people from birth to death. How? Provide money, or provide services, or provide any materials they need, like food, for example. But I don't know if the current government's new program is considered as Bantuan Sosial. I don't know the definition. But that's also provide in-kind of food, right? It can be considered as social protection. But I don't know about the Indonesian definition. But when a mother gets pregnant, so they should receive cash benefit because they cannot make salary because they need to stop working. Who will pay salary? When people get sick, when people work, they also need to receive some income, right? But they cannot work. Who will pay? When people are unemployed, they need to look for a job. But during the job search, they also need income to survive. When people get injured in a workplace, they also need income during rehabilitation and during job search, right? You also know when you go to the hospital, you can get free medical services. Free, why? Because someone is paying for it. So, and when you become old, you also need income, even though you don't work. So someone need to pay your income or pay people's income, even though you don't perform working. Who will pay? So that's the responsibility of the state, government, or the country. You can name it. So the next, that is the basic concept of social protection. How the social protection is being financed? You know the word jaminan social? I think direct English translation is social security. In the ILO, we don't usually differentiate between jamsos or bansos or social protection. We call it social protection interchangeably. But in Indonesia, I think we say jamsos when workers and the company pay some percentage of your salary. So in practice, you haven't worked, so probably you don't know, but your parents are probably working in a company, but their monthly salaries are deducted by the company. And then the company pays to some portion to BPJS Karena Kaljan, Yogyakarta office, for example. It's online, so they don't pay in cash. But this is how workers and the employers, companies pay contribution. We call it contribution or premium. So it's called jamsos because workers and employers pay jaminan social insurance. If the government is only the one who is paying benefits and then the fund, that is called Bantun Social in this country, Bansos, or social assistance. Next, please. So BPJS or the government collect money from the people somehow through tax, through premium or contributions, and then they keep it in a fund, the government fund. Keep the risk in a pool. That we call it risk pooling in, I think it's an economic term. Yeah, that's risk pooling. And then disburse the money when people need it. That's a social protection concept. Okay. In Indonesia, do you know any of these schemes? The name start with J. There are a lot of schemes. JKN, Jaminan Kesehatan Nasional. Tahu? Yeah. Okay. That is one scheme. Out of 280 million people in this country, 210 million people are currently covered by these schemes actively. That's a mix of a jamsos and bansos, because more than half of them don't pay premium, but the government is paying premium. So that's a mixed scheme. And then you can enjoy free medical care, right? Yeah, probably not all services, depending on Chris, right? It depends on, that's a hot topic in, I think, also on the Compass these days. Sickness benefits, maternity benefits are currently provided by the employers, companies. There are no social jamsos or bansos for that. Unemployment benefit is called JKP. It started 3 years ago, 2022. And I was supporting the government to design the program. And a lot of researchers also contributed inputs to the policy design. And old age benefit, pension. Have you ever heard of pension? When you reach the retirement age, 60 years old, you may receive some money every month. Otherwise, you will have no income. That's called jaminan pension. And we also have other scheme called JKK. When you get injured in workplace, BPJS will pay you. And that is the JKK. I don't remember the acronym in Bahasa. PKH, it's called Family Hope Program. What is the Indonesian word? Program Keluarga Harapan. Okay, PKH. We call it PKH. And about 10 million households are receiving cash transfers, money from the government. That is the Bantuan Sosial. So we have many schemes here for people who work in a company. PU. Next. People who do not work in a company is called BPU in this country, self-employed workers. Those who work in a kakilima, angkringan, probably they are self-employed, informal, right? Because they don't have employers. That's a definition here, basically. But they have different rules to be applied to participate in JAMSOS, Jaminan Social. They cannot participate in Jaminan Pension by laws and regulations. Pension scheme, for example. So different rules apply here. They don't have a JKP. Next. And then you see more complexity if you look at each scheme. Who is implementing it? The government need to coordinate each other here. But this is the different institutions that implement different programs. BPJS TK, BPJS Kesehatan, or Ministry of Social Affairs, that is Kemen SOS. And also TASPEN is for civil servant, and ASABRI, that's for TNI. That is now popular on Compass today, right? In different context. Yeah, and police officers, they are participating in JAMSOS through ASABRI, separate program. Next. And then BANSOS have different kind of benefit. This is basically the overview of the amount of money people can get if they are poor or if they are vulnerable. Who will decide? The government will target them. For JAMSOS, BPJS will not target beneficiaries. That's the difference. For JAMSOS, BPJS only announce the rules, conditions, eligibility criteria, and then beneficiaries can come to their BPJS office, claim the benefit if that happens. For example, if you get injured in the workplace, you can come. For JKP, you must contribute for 1 year at least, and then you have to be paid off by your employers. This is the rule, basic rule. You know it when you need to come to the office to collect money. But for BANSOS, you don't know when the government will target you. That's the difference. But the common thing is that you will get money from the government or BPJS. But the design and the role may be slightly different. If you are not poor, you will not get BANSOS. Even though you are not poor, you will still get JAMSOS if something happens. If you get pregnant, if you become old, if you get injured, you will get it. If the eligibility criteria is met. Okay, next. So you understand more or less about SOS, JAMSOS? Still? Okay, great. Thank you. Probably I will skip these details, but depending on the size of companies you work, different rules apply. If you work in a smaller companies, you may not be eligible to participate in the JAMSOS, BPJS. But I will come back to that if you have any questions. But if you are if you do not work in companies, as I said, you may not have a coverage of jam sauce. So there are pros and cons. If you want to become self-employed, you may have more freedom, but you may have limited access to jam sauce in this country. Next. Yeah, I'll skip this. Yeah. This is more detail. There are a lot of formula. Probably this is just for you to look in detail if you are only interested. There are predefined formula how much you can get. It's usually based on your earnings, monthly salary. If you get 2 million rupiah per month or 3 million rupiah per month, the formula is already decided, predetermined. If you are unemployed, you will get 60% of 3 million rupiah. So that is 1.8, right? Up to 6 months. Not full in one time, but every month you will get 1.8. That is the formula. Similarly, you also have different rules applied when you get old, how much you can get. The amount is between 400,000 to 4.7 million rupiah every month, depending on your income level, something like that. It's predetermined. Yeah, next. Yeah, I'll skip this. This is the rule for JKK. Next. Yeah, I briefly explained about the eligibility criteria. As I said, it's already clearly mentioned on the BPJS website if you go. That's a feature of jam sauce. For JKP, you must must work for 12 months to become eligible before you are terminated. You must be 59 years old for pension, and you must pay 15 years of contributions during clearly stated. So if you are met, you meet these criteria, you will definitely receive money from BPJS. That's a jam sauce. Next. Yeah. Next. But as I said, for jam sauce, workers, companies must pay monthly premium based on your salary. For example, let's take one example here. This is a percentage. For example, for pension, JP, the third from the bottom, 3% of contribution rate, 3% of your monthly salary should be paid to BPJS every month. So in practice, if your salary is, let's say 3 million rupiah, it may be too low for you, but 3 million rupiah and multiply by 3. That is the amount your company will have to pay to BPJS every month. And then portion is divided between workers and employers, 2%, 1%. That's a contribution arrangement. Next. That is how jam sauce is financed in this country. Yeah, different rules apply for BPU, self-employed. Next part. Yeah, different rules apply for construction workers. There are 3 kinds of categories, different categories of workers for different schemes in BPJS. Next. If we look at Southeast Asian countries, I think Indonesia has been doing quite actually good progress these days. Since 2015, Indonesia started several schemes, new schemes, including the Jaminan Pension, that's a new one, and then JKP, that's also a new one. JKK, JKM, those are the old schemes, I think for more than 40 years, if I remember correctly. And JKN is also the new one for the universal applications. Next. Yeah, next. So before I talk about just energy transition and climate change, I would also like to share the kind of regional comparison about the progress of coverage of social protection. Social protection includes JAMSOS and BANSOS here. Next. In terms of the share of children who are receiving cash benefit, Indonesia is relatively doing well. So 26% of children are receiving either BANSOS or JAMSOS. I trust that these are mostly coming from PKH, BANSOS. Next. The share of mothers with newborns receiving cash benefit, that's another indicators. By the way, these indicators, the ILO is reporting to the UN to monitor the progress of this SDG. The ILO is in charge of monitoring SDG target 1.3.1, the social protection coverage. And we use these data to report the country progress. Yeah, so here, Indonesia is relatively lower than others. 28% of mothers with babies are covered. I think most of these mothers are receiving a PKH, in my view, because Indonesia doesn't have maternity cash benefit, maternity leave cash benefit. It is required by the labor law now, so employers must pay. But if they do not comply, of course, mothers cannot receive it. So most of other countries have maternity cash benefits, so they have a higher coverage here. Next. Indonesia has very low disability benefit coverage, unfortunately. PKH, BANSOS, provides some disability benefits to the poor households who have persons with disabilities, but it's limited. Jaminan pension has some provisions for disability benefit, but it's also limited. So only 2.5% of persons with disabilities receiving social protection benefits. Next. Yeah, it's still zero because we didn't take the latest figure. But to be fair, Indonesia established unemployment benefit in 2022. If I understand correctly, every month about 30 to 40,000 people are receiving JKP benefit out of 8 million unemployed workers, right? That from BPS, right? 7 or 8 usually every year we have unemployed workers. So only 30 to 40,000 people are receiving JKP every month. Next. Yeah, I will skip it. Employment injury, occupational injury scheme. Pension, this is more relevant for you, young people. Indonesia has one of the lowest pension coverage in the region, Southeast Asia. We need to do something. And we are still supporting the Indonesian and the government workers and the companies to agree on to establish a good pension scheme in the future. There are only pension schemes for civil servant, TNI, police, armed forces, and the large and the medium enterprises in these countries. But most workers work in a small micro enterprises or self-employed, right? Unfortunately. And they do not have rights to participate in any pension schemes, but they will become old equally. And your generation will have to take care of them. Even though your fathers and mothers are fine, but probably your neighbors will become old without pension. And then somehow people will have to support through tax or through community, right? That's going to be a new issue next. But we need separate session for that to discuss. Next. Yeah, so finally, I think we have a common understanding about Jamsos, Bansos, what is the progress of social protection in Indonesia. I hope you have some basis. No? Somehow? No? Okay. Does anyone know just energy transition? Have you ever heard of just energy transition? Compass, Tempo, whatever? IG, TikTok? Raise hand? No? No one? No? Really? What is the terminology for just energy transition in Bahasa Indonesia? Transisi energy.
Renewable energy.
Okay. I will go. I will go, and then maybe I will come back. Okay. Next. Even though you may not know, Indonesia, at least the government of Indonesia, committed to achieve net zero emission, CO2 emission by 2060. I think 2060, not 2050. 2060. So net zero means Indonesia will produce CO2, but it will also absorb CO2, and it becomes net zero, right? So at least your government has already committed to make it net zero by 2060. So there are two major approaches to reduce CO2 or to increase renewable energy or replace. Renewable energy like solar, hydropower, or windmill, I don't know how to call it. Geothermal, you have a lot of volcanoes. So one of the major approach of the government is to accelerate the retirement of coal-fired power plant. Does it make sense? Coal-fired power plant, you understand? Burning coal to generate energy, that is coal-fired power plant, in my understanding. If the Indonesian government reduced the coal-fired power plant, of course, the supply and demand of coals also slightly decline, I think. I don't know about the volume. So miners in the mining industries may be affected. People who work in coal-fired power plant may lose job. People who may have abilities to work in renewable energy sectors may get the job. So the new jobs were also created, right? But at the same time, many jobs were dismissing. So we need to have transition in a just manner. That is just energy transition. Just means fair manner. Justice, yeah. So that's why I think this is kind of buzzword, trendy word, at least in Jakarta, at least at the level of the government, just energy transition, or JET, JET, or kind of popular terminologies in the energy community, at least these days, just energy transition. So what is the linkage between just energy transition and social protection? I think that's why I'm here to talk about. Next. Let's take one example. JKP. I hope you still remember what I explained about unemployment benefit. When you are dismissed, BPJS will pay you 60% of your previous salary, up to 6 months. That was adopted. That is a new policy adopted, I think, a few weeks ago. PP number 6, 2025. That's the latest one. And then unemployed workers will also receive services by local manpower office, and probably also from BPJS, to introduce new jobs. This company is looking for jobs that is suitable for your CVs. Job matching. Or what kind of jobs do you want to get? Job counseling. Oh, probably you should improve your CV this way, this way, this way. Or maybe I can give you practice session, mock interview. This is what they do. This is called public employment services in English. I don't know in Bahasa Indonesia. So this kind of support is also provided if you start receiving a JKP. If you need vocational training to get additional skills, to get the new jobs, imagine people who work in the labor-intensive sectors like coal mines. They may not have IT skills, but they will have to get a new job because their workplace will close. They may have to attend a vocational training schools to get a new skill, to learn something new, or they probably need to get the driving license, for example. They probably need additional skills. So the government will support public vocational training services. So JKP will facilitate and provide these three services, including cash, PES, public employment services, and vocational trainings if workers need it. But the objective is to facilitate return to work as soon as they can, to get a new job as soon as they can. Next. This is one real example how the government implements JKP. Have you ever heard of Siap culture? Maybe not. Yeah, you don't have to know yet. Yeah, maybe grade 4. When you start looking for a job, probably you may hear this. The government of Indonesia, Kemenaker, Ministry of Manpower, established the special unit called Pascal ID. That is Pasar Prasakarja or Pusat Prasakarja. Yeah. Labor Market Center in English. And this center facilitates the transition from one job to the other jobs, not only for just energy transition, but in general. When you lose job, this center will facilitate you to get the JKP benefit from BPJS and to find a job by providing services, vocational trainings. And they sometimes organize job fairs, call a lot of companies who want to recruit new employees. And then they will facilitate job matching to find new jobs. Next. One example from Korea too. They also have similar facilities. It's called a Welfare Plus Center in English, not in Korean language. Direct translation. And they have 174 facilities across Korea. But do you know the population of Korea? It's much smaller than Indonesia. Indonesia 280. I think Korea 60 million or something, no? 70, 60 million. Probably you know better than me about Korea because people like Korean drama and stuff like that. You can double check population of Korea. So they have 170 service points, like a Siap Gadjah, Pesa Gadjah. They have 5,000 staff members to provide job matching services. And they introduced and placed 1.5 jobs. This is their result every year. Next. In Japan, we call it Hello Work. It's a little bit more catchy. They have 544 offices like this, Hello Work service points. They have 26,000 staff members to provide such supports across the country. Japan has about 120 million population in total. Unfortunately, many of them are too old, unlike Indonesia. But that can already tell you need more centers because you have more workers here. But in reality, I think the government is still making an effort to improve the capacity of such centers, service provision of JKP. So I think now the government has only 20 to 30 service points across the countries. Otherwise, you will only have to access online services called Siap Gadjah. Yeah, next. So, one concrete example. When we talk about the just energy transition, we tend to think about this is something new. But is that true? Energy transition took place long ago. Because now we are discussing, I don't know if I should say this, we talk about benzene, no, these days. Another issue on benzene, on compass, that's another issue. I don't know, I shouldn't talk much about it. Huh? So, but what I want to talk about is the transition, energy transition from coal to oil. It happened long ago, okay? Long ago, 40, 50 years ago, it happened. Then now we're using petrol or benzene. But what happened at that time? What did the government do for the workers to find a job, to protect them? I don't think this is something new, no? We could learn from the past what other countries did at that time. My country, Japan, had a lot of problems at that time because I think we are one of the largest exporter of coal at that time. And a lot of miners lost jobs because of, the Japanese, I think, lost, how do you call it, competitiveness in terms of higher wage than other countries. So the Japanese coal production decreased a lot, and a lot of mines had to close. One research was conducted to monitor the progress of the closure of one coal mine in 1997. The mine is called the Ippei coal mine, southern part of Japan, in Qisha. About 1,553 workers were dismissed, and then, this is actually it's not a sampling survey. This is, I think, the researchers captured and monitor and track the progress of job seeking of these 1,553 workers. What happened to them after 4 years? About 200 people decided to retire after the closure. And 1,300 people were looking for a job. And 1,065 workers found a job within 4 years. 250 people couldn't find a job, so still looking for a job after 4 years. So the employment rate was 80%, and the 20% was unemployment rate from this mine after 4 years. What did the government do? So the government of Japan provided really close support together with this company, to facilitate job matching, to introduce new jobs, to find the new jobs suitable for miners. And then also they extended the unemployment benefit period. The ordinary unemployment benefit scheme in Japan, JKP scheme in Japan, provides only benefits up to 9 months at maximum. 11 months at maximum, ordinary scheme. But for this specific locations, the government extended the period up to 3 years because considering the circumstances. So this is a temporary adjustment, expansion, to give them a favor. And when people find a job, they get the incentive, re-employment allowance. So people have incentive to find a new job quickly. When they have to move to the other town, because the whole mine closed, but that small village didn't have other industry, they have to move to the other town. The government provided, JKP provided relocation allowance, moving allowance, pay for truck, pay for Lala Move or whatever, you can use it, that money. They provided vocational training if you need such trainings for getting new skills. The program, the duration depends on the courses, right? 9 days to 1 year for free. And during that time, you also get the allowance, accommodation fee, lunch, you need some allowance. In addition to unemployment benefit, JKP benefit. Next. And these were paid by JKP in Japan. This is a breakdown of 1,500. This is samples from 1,500 by age cohort. You can see older persons had a lot of difficulties finding new jobs. Their employment rates went down as you aged. So qualitative data showed all senior workers may require a special support to find a new jobs, right? But also qualitative interviews show that senior workers were actually receiving old age benefits. So they didn't have incentive to look for a job. That's another finding. Because I think after 55 years old, the miners in Japan were eligible to receive pension at that time. Another aspect, another findings from qualitative research was that senior workers had a tendency, they wanted to stay in the same place they were born. They didn't want to move and find a job in the different town. So these combined results can explain some tendency of, different generations may require different services. Next. So what can we do in Indonesia? I don't remember exactly the latest government strategy, how many coal-fired power plants the government is going to close. But I think they are currently targeting to close the state-owned coal-fired power plant, but not all of them. I don't remember. I think 20 coal-fired power plants or something like that. You can find it, but I don't remember the latest figure because sometimes it's changing. No, the target tend to change, but I think there will be massive number like 20 coal-fired power plant will be targeted to early retirement. However, JKP alone cannot solve all the problems. Do you still remember? JKP doesn't protect BPU, self-employed. But you can imagine, do you have a coal-fired power plant near your village, kampung somewhere? Maybe not. You don't know where it is, right? But it's ada. Yeah. Cilegon, it's Banten. Yeah. There is another one near Cirebon too. Yeah, and then they're closing down now. Yeah, I think. But what kind of location is it? A small, remote area, or? Okay. Okay. So there are a lot of businesses surrounding the coal-fired power plant because there are a lot of workers working there because it's kind of a labor-intensive. Of course, there are knowledge-intensive parts like engineers there, but also there are a lot of laborers, so-called laborers, right? And also mines, coal mines, there are a lot of laborers. And there are a lot of surrounding businesses, catering services, warung, laundries, of course, cleaning services, housing and accommodation, running accommodation business like Costco-san. The community may lose all of them, right? The business, the economy, the whole economy tends to be dominating. It's dependency is quite heavy in a small community. If such a big industries suddenly disappears. But the JKP, JAMSOS, cannot provide unemployment benefit to them because they are not a PU. They don't work in the companies. They are not old, so they cannot receive pension yet. They are still working, but they don't get injured. JKK is not provided. They need some other support, especially if this is a government initiative to close down the coal-fired power plant, and the surrounding economy will be also affected. Of course, the government is thinking about it, I think. Yeah, but you can also economically, you can think about from economic theory or whatever. That's what you're studying, right? What will happen? What will be the impact in the community? But the JAMSOS cannot support by design. BANSOS cannot support by design because they are not poor, right? As a result, they may become poor, and then they can probably receive, but they will have to wait until they become poor. You don't want to wait. So they need some support. So the JAMSOS, BANSOS alone cannot solve all the problem. They need some other support. That's something you can think about in your thesis, maybe. Next. Yeah, this is a separate agenda, but probably open your eyes. In this country, the youth unemployment is very high. You may know, no? Labor statistics, very high. Youth unemployment rate is 18%. Above 25 years old, the unemployment rate goes down to 3.2%. So this shows in Indonesia, it's very difficult finding a first job, in our view. Next part. So what is the implication from social protection angle? Next slide. When we talk about JKP policies, we usually divide the unemployed workers into two. People who have ever worked or who have never worked. because if you remember, one of the criteria for JKP is that you have to work for 12 months at least. So if you are the first-time job seekers, you are not eligible to receive a JKP benefit. So PPJs cannot help you in this case in terms of cash. But of course, this Nakal or Sakalja may be able to help you to organize a job fair. But I just wanted to show this to you. JKP alone, it cannot help all unemployed workers by design, even to facilitate just energy transition. Next. So this is the very last topic before I close. Yeah, 10 minutes left. Let's open up slightly the scope of the discussion to climate risks in general. Among a very limited vocabulary, my limited vocabulary in Bahasa Indonesia, I know banjir. There are a lot of banjir, right? Floods in this country. Jakarta, it's always flooding. Cyclones are less common here, no? But we have rainy days every day. Droughts, I think last year we had a long dry seasons. Probably farmers suffered. Sea level rise, yes, Jakarta is sinking. Right? That's why the capital has moved to Kalimantan, Ibu Kota. Right? Yeah. IKN, yes. Heat wave, yeah, it's always hot here. And it's not climate risk, but you also have volcanoes and earthquake. A lot of risks here, disasters in this country, including climate risks. But what can social protection do? Next. The difference between bansos and the jamsos is that for bansos, the government will always have to allocate budgets every year. But for jamsos, PPJs already have money when the flood happens. Right? The government may have a tax fund budgeted in the previous years for bansos, but jamsos, they also always have money in their account. For bansos, the government will have to tell you, oh, you are targeted. Please come to the office and collect money. For jamsos, you can go to the office if you get injured in the workplace when a flood happens. You go yourself. So that slightly different, right? So by nature, jamsos is more kind of already shock responsive. If climate shocks happens, you can immediately decide yourself to go to collect money. I got unemployed because my factory closed. My factory is collapsed. My employer disappeared. I can go and collect JKP. Even in a flood situation or sea level rise or whatever, disaster happens. But the bansos can fill the gap. As I said, the jamsos cannot help. If you are first-time job seekers, jamsos cannot help you. But bansos could possibly help. So they can fill the gap with each other to create seamless protection provided by the government. Next. I think that's it. Oh, yeah. Next. I will go to the last slide. Yeah. Oh, before? Yeah. Before? Yes. But in my example from the Japanese coal mines, you remember 1997, Japanese coal mine closed, and then government temporarily extended the unemployment benefit period to 3 years. Temporary adjustment. This is not very unique in Japan, but it can happen in many other countries to respond to climate shocks. For example, in Argentina, learned that there was a temporary coverage expansion, targeted more people or accepted more claims after volcano happens or landslide happens, that region. And then government provided subsidies through social security fund, and then increased the benefit level to provide them better protection. Jamaica had something similar for hurricane, like cyclone. They provided the one-off lump sum additional benefit to pensioners, existing pensioners. They already have a bank accounts, right? Because they pay, pension fund pays every month to pensioners. So the government use this channel to immediately disperse money to targeted older persons. In Fiji, they allow to withdraw more money from JHT, Jaminan Haritor, saving account in PPJS. The Philippines, they didn't change the criteria benefit at all, but they allowed, they pay 3 months in advance instead of every month. So people can get larger amount in the first month after climate shocks took place, cyclone. So it improved the people's cash flow to cope with. There are more we experienced in COVID-19 temporary program adjustments that some of them may be applicable for climate risk response too. Next, I think that's the last slide. Next one. Yeah, next one. Next one. Yeah, next. Yeah, here we go. This is the very last one. So, example. This is simulation. It hasn't happened here in this country. On the left-hand side, you will see the current existing JKP policy design. You need to pay 12 months to become eligible. You will get 60% for 6 months. But what if Jogja is temporarily sinking because of flood? And let's say a factory or toko completely closed down for many, many months, and your employers tell you, oh, sorry, I need to dismiss you. You're unemployed from tomorrow. Let's say JKP could be temporarily expanded. Let's say, okay, you only worked for 6 months, but now you can eligible for that. But this is only exceptional case in Jogja. If the government says so, it can be possible, right? If it's regulated in advance. Similarly, benefit level should be increased to 80% instead of 60%, so that people can be protected better. But these kind of arrangements need to be regulated in advance at the level of Pepe or UU. And then the trigger should be set. For example, what's the name of the government institution? BPM, the disasters agency. Yeah, BNPB. For example, this is example, right? For example, if the BNPB declare the emergency in Jogja because of flood, and then if the law or regulation said this is a trigger, when they said this is emergency, declaration of emergency, then this immediately trigger. If regulation says so, the BPJS Jogja doesn't have to wait for additional decisions made by the government, but immediately BPJS Jogja, without consultation with the government, can increase benefit level to 80%, for example, or reduce the eligibility criteria from 12 months to 6 months, so that more people will be benefited, protected. Because the climate risk response is kind of time sensitive. They need supports immediately, within 1 day or 2 days. We cannot wait for, the long government decisions. I went to West Kalimantan, I think in Chinese New Year's days, because I wanted to see what's happening in Chinese community. That was Banjul after 1 week. No one came and probably helped them. But if there are such an arrangement to trigger immediately, probably more quicker response can be possible in this country too. I think this is my closing slide, and at least I hope you enjoyed 1 or 2 slides. You probably didn't enjoy all. But, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. Yeah, applause. Yeah. Thank you, Bapak Ippei. That is an excellent presentation. Yeah, it is an eye-opener for me and hopefully for the students on knowledge on social protection. Ippei already covered a lot, mainly for, I hope the student understand about the overview of the social protection, especially in Indonesia. You know your rights, and then you can prepare for your future, maybe when you are working in the future. At the second, how about the just energy transition will have an impact with so many laborers and also workers that will translate change to the other, maybe the renewable energy. And Ippei also covers on what is the impact on the natural hazards, because the climate change make the natural hazards becomes more frequent. Yeah, and it will be because we are living in the ring of fire. Indonesia living in the ring of fires, and from the inside of the earth until from the air, everything danger is around us. So we need the protections. And I would like to invite Dr. Qisha to discuss the presentation, like 25 to 30 minutes. And without further ado, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Pugo. Thank you, Ippei, for your presentation. So my discussion is actually kind of continuing and giving you more insights, like more economical or more quantification insights regarding how to quantifying the impact on workers in particular, because that's my expertise. And we're going to focus on the energy transition in Indonesia regarding the coal sector. But before I present these materials, I think I just would like to kind of link Ippei's presentation or today's seminar presentation to our lecture, because it's part of our guest lecture. So I believe Pak Pugo and we delivered a section or a materials regarding poverty last week, where I think you also have discussed regarding CCT, UCT, which is part of the social insurance. So the way we use the terminologies that Ippei just mentioned, so we use social protection as the umbrella for all schemes, including the social assistance, which is the CT and UCT. Second is the social insurance / social security. So we use the term social insurance and social security interchangeably. And lastly is the active labor market policy, if it's related to the labor market in particular. So what we covered in class is about social assistance, which is part of social protection that protects the poor in particular. But now we know that not only the poor needs help. Like every one of us, your family needs also something to cover them or kind of cushion their income, the loss in income or whatever shocks happen to your family or to yourself, which then can maintain your welfare. So it's not only the poor that needs assistance, but the non-poor also needs to be protected by the state, because the state responsibilities are not only the poor, but the entire society. But now we know that there are different schemes, which is a more universal one, which is through the social security / social insurance scheme. And when we discuss regarding training, that will be much more particular to the labor market, and we have the active labor market policy. So, and it's also going to be related with the chapter of environment, because as Ippei mentioned, and also we will also discuss regarding the energy transition in Indonesia, it's also kind of a commitment by the government of Indonesia to kind of reduce the CO2 emission in Indonesia, and that's going to be related to the chapter of environment that we're going to discuss after the mid exam. So what I'm going to deliver in here is particularly related to the government of Indonesia commitments to reduce the CO2. Sorry, the one that Ippei already explained. So this is also part of my project with ILO, but not with Ippei's team, with the other team, Qisha ILO 2025. But unfortunately, because it's still an ongoing project, so I couldn't really share the slides. But if anyone interested with knowing more about the method or this topic, we're also going to write a paper, hopefully after the project, which kind of can give more insights or values for academic purposes. So yeah, what we did was, so we do like a study case in the coal sector. Can you, next slide please? So yeah, just like Ippei mentioned, the government of Indonesia has the commitment to kind of reduce that dependency on, in particular, what I'm going to discuss on the coal sector or coal mining. So it's part of the low carbon and climate resilience commitment, or long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience by 2050, and the plan is to achieve net zero emission in the power sector by 2060. So there's been like several regulations actually that kind of become the starting point for the government action in planning this retirement of power plant in several places or in several provinces until 2060. Although again, we never know with the new government, but it's actually already written in our long-term government plan in RPJMN. So if you have time, take a look at it. It's the new RPJMN 2025 to 2055. So it's also part of the Golden Indonesia goal by 2045. Right. Next. So what we're trying to do, I think, just kind of briefly add into the discussions by Ippei, we're just trying to get the evidence. Like Ippei mentioned the case in Japan that it will not only affect the workers within that sector, but also the surrounding sector. But again, as an economist, we always need an evidence-based policy recommendation. So that's what we did. We kind of conduct this mixed method strategy to answer that questions. But before that, if we look at the urgency for just energy transition in Indonesia coal sector, we see in here that in terms of global export ranking by 2022, it highlights that Indonesia is the world's largest exporter with total export of coal. It's 10 million terajoules. So I think that's the measurement that they use. So yeah, we're the biggest exporters. But then, you know, or you will know later on in the chapter of environment that any non-renewable energy or even like in any production, it creates pollution or it creates some waste to the environment in particular. And in particular with the non-renewable technology, we are the number 7 contributor, the biggest contributor of carbon dioxide emitter after China, United States, India, Russia, Japan, Iran, and Indonesia. So yeah, for such a developing countries in Southeast Asia, that means we're number 1, right? So we are, well, yeah, if you want to be proud of something, then yeah, we are the biggest exporter of non-renewable energy, and we're the number 7 in the world for CO2 emitter. At least we are excellent in something. Well, yeah, next. But of course, that's not really a good point. That's why the government of Indonesia has that commitment, which is kind of in line with the SDGs in the environment. So what we did, like I mentioned, we kind of tried to gather the evidence through a mixed method approach. So we used the existing secondary data to kind of explore the characteristics of workers in the coal sector in Indonesia, and also to see like how the coal sector is interrelated to the other sectors within the industry or in the other industry. So So I don't know whether you've been taught about this data in your econometrics class, but we do have like an interregional input-output model. So if you remember in your microeconomics, a production of a firm can be also an input for the other firms. So we have this national data and also at the regional level data that calculates how much of a sector or an industry input that becomes the final output to the consumers, and how much of that input is becoming an how much of that output becoming the input for the other sector. So it's input output. So input output model. So we use the ERIO model or interregional input-output model, but because we are trying to calculate the impact on workers, so we merge this model with the National Labor Force Survey model, or SAKRNAS to be exact, if you haven't really heard. So yeah, the National Labor Force Survey data is SAKRNAS, and the Household Social Economic Survey data is SUSENAS. But with the SUSENAS, we're actually just trying to kind of capture the welfare on because it's at the household level. So SUSENAS data survey is a household survey data, whereas SAKRNAS data is a labor force survey data. But then we realized that we couldn't capture everything using these data, so we have to go to the field, but field survey is out of question because not enough resources. So we have discussed that there are other approaches for qualitative studies, which can also be an FGD, which is more efficient. So we did conduct FGDs to experts, representatives from the coal mining business, representatives from the government, from the workers, representatives, and also from the local community and the local community groups as well. Okay, next. So just to highlight a little bit so that you can kind of grasp the idea how to quantifying, because again, in economics, we're not only needs to kind of give a policy recommendation, hey, we need more coverage for workers or for those impacted by the climate change, but then the policymakers will ask you, okay, by how much, by how many people, because then it will then influence the budgeting that the state needs to pay for this impacted people or for the impacted workers. So we're trying to look at the regions which are like the biggest producers of coal in Indonesia. So if you look at in here, East Kalimantan and South Kalimantan and then South Sumatra are kind of the three biggest producers of coal in Indonesia, and also the proportion of coal workers also very high in East Kalimantan and South Sumatra. Sorry, this is the proportion of coal workers, but the top producers, the top two is East Kalimantan and South Sumatra. Although in terms of the proportion of coal workers by region, South Sumatra is the third after South Kalimantan. But at the same time, we also see that when they are becoming the most or the highest producers, they're also the highest emitter at the same time. We also find that not only that the carbon emission is high in East Kalimantan and South Sumatra as the top two producers, but when we look at the reserve, so reserve is like the cadangan. So because it's natural resource, right? It's a natural resource sector, it's a natural resource industry. So it's actually more of a resource intensive industry, just like gold mining, right? This one is coal mining. So apparently, yes, East Kalimantan and South Sumatra, they do still have a high reserve of coal, a reserve in their region. So when we went there and some of the miners, they said that, oh, we still can mine the coal for another 100 years in Indonesia. But the question is, if we keep on digging the coal for the next 100 years, there's going to have lots of impacts to the environment and so on and so forth. So they're going to kind of mix mixed views because, yeah, everyone, I mean, by the data, there are still lots of coals in Indonesia, but at the same time, it creates negative externalities. Again, this the term that you will learn after the mid-exam. So that something needs to be done. But when there's a negative impact, then the social protection need to cover that negative impact. So next. So yeah, so we try first kind of just to plot how social protection can come into this discussion. And just like Ippei mentioned that coal sector is a formal sector, and most of the workers are formal workers. And I think this is something that you need to learn in your labor class. What's the difference between the definition of sector, formal versus informal sector, and formal versus informal workers? Or you might want to ask Ippei later on. I also learned from Ippei. But anyway, when you look at the data, most of the workers are formal workers, meaning if you're formal workers, like Ippei mentioned, you're not eligible for bansos. Why? Because you're not poor. You're not poor. If you're formal and you're poor, something must be kind of question regarding your wage scheme in your firm. So if you look at in here, most of the workers in the coal sector, so we only select 2 top producers of East Kalimantan and South Sumatra. Most workers are from the top tier deciles. Next. Which is using the size distribution method that we discussed last week. But what interesting, where the social protection becomes important, is when we look at the contract. This is another term that might be new. Most of the workers are PKWT workers. So if you look at the right, so it's right hand side on your screen. The fixed term contract PKWT is like pegawai kontrak. It's not like pegawai tetap. Pegawai tetap is PKWTT. So I hope you know the difference. Just like when you're doing an internship, paling cuma 6 months, right? 6 months internship, 3 months internship, that's PKWT. So short run contract. But the thing is, depending on where you look at the regulations, so based on labor law regulation, there's actually a regulation that for PKWT contract is maximum 3 years. So it's 2 years and you can extend by 1 year. After that, the firm should either no longer do another PKWT contract or promote to PKWTT without break, right? If I'm not mistaken, 3 years without break. I'm not really sure. Yeah, without break. But then, using that labor law 2003, the in compliance by firm is that they usually do a break. So after 3 years, do a break, and then they do another contract. So like, it's not that they continue as in the 4th year, but they consider it as year 0 again. So that's the in compliance with Labor Law 2003, which I also wrote in one of my writings. But then we have the Cipta Kerja, and I think that's what being used in right now. And that's also come up into our FGD discussion that these miners have been a PKWT. Most of the PKWT, by the way, are the miners, because maybe I'm a little bit different with Ippei. So coal sector is labor intensive at the miners level. But at the top level, it's more of resource intensive or capital intensive, like the big ships that they use to kind of transport the coal. It requires lots of capital. And only one driver of the ship can kind of deliver 100 tons at once. But at the miners level, there are lots of laborer, and they are mostly PKWT. Meaning, if they lose their job, and the firms just simply do not continue their contract, they're not eligible for JKP. They're not covered by JKP. So meaning that we look at that, there's been a huge proportion of PKWT workers, and these workers, even if they're formal workers, but their status of contract, PKWT, and they've been like PKWT workers for 10 years. So the firm always renew the contract every 6 months or every year. And right now, some of the workers even have been a PKWT workers up to 10 or even more years. That's and most of them are the miners. So we see that even if they're formal workers, they're not very secure in their social protection. Next. So that kind of becomes our concern. And again, if we split the data from the Sakarnas, the coverage of workers have been covered by social protection is also not universal. Next. Yeah. So if you're a worker, at least you should be covered by JKK and JKM. So by design, if your firms are very compliant with the law, you should be covered at least by two schemes. So what we did first is that we trying to calculate the number of impacted workers per region using the ERIO model or ERIO simulation. So it's like a micro simulation because again, I think I have to kind of agree with Ippei. Even my team, we haven't really found what will be the gradual plan for the government to decrease or retiring the power plan. So we just do our own assumption that the retirement starting from 10%, 30%, 50% until 100% by 2060. Because again, we do not know what's the percentage goal and let alone in which region they're going to start this retiring of this power plan. So in total, so in ERIO method, we can see how the impact of closing the coal sector can impact the forward sector, meaning the sectors who use coal sectors as input. But we also can see the impact on the backward sectors, meaning the sectors that give input to the coal sector. So in industry or in microeconomics, you know the upstream and downstream division, right? Hulu and hilir, that's the thing with industry. Ada industri hulu, ada industri hilir. Industri hulu are the ones producing the inputs. So hulu is upstream division and hilir is the one that's the final output. So when you close down the coal sector, it will affect both the forward sectors and backward sectors, the upstream sectors and the downstream sectors. Great. Next. So so in each of the province, of course, because Indonesia is still using coal for electricity, most of the affected forward sectors are electricity. So if we do not have coal sector, we do not have electricity unless there's another plan when we can use candle. Okay, next. Yeah, it's the same thing. Next. Next, so we calculate the numbers of workers in both region and also in the sectors that is not only the coal sector but also the sectors affecting or affected by the closure of coal. This is only one thing. Next, so what we could not measure apparently, next, is what we got from the qualitative analysis. That not only the workers that we can quantify using our data, although our data also still full of assumptions because our data is very limited. Well, we can also identify the lack of social protection for the current PKWT coal workers, but apparently near the area of coal sectors or the coal industries or coal miners, just like Ippei mentioned, there are lots of informals. So when we plot the data of East Kalimantan and give me 5 more minutes. East Kalimantan and South Sumatra, the coal workers is only like 5% or 3%, I forgot, out of the total workers. Because most of the workers in these two provinces are informal workers. Meaning, those who are working in the coal sector as formal workers, even if East Kalimantan and South Sumatra are the top two producers, are only a little bit part of the total employment in those two provinces. And these informal sectors are very dependable on the coal sectors. And that is what we cannot capture in the data, unfortunately, because ERIO only measure that formal sector's input and output. And again, the question will be if there's no coal sector, meaning there's a questions regarding the JKP provision for the PKWT workers and also for the informal workers who are considered as BPU, they haven't been covered almost by any insurance schemes at the moment. So there's going to be a big questions and requires lots of efforts and I think the missing social protection even before energy transition is already a big challenge, and it's gonna be another or exacerbate the situation if the energy transition will take place. All right, thank you. I think that's from me.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Qisha, to share your applause. I forgot. Thank you, Ibu Qisha, to share your extensive research. Yeah, the extensive explanation from Ippei. And before we move to Q&A session, maybe I will give opportunity to Ippei to respond on Qisha results, maybe. And please.
Thank you. Very interesting. I didn't know this project was jointly done by my colleague. So I cannot really criticize the government of not coordinating each other because I didn't know Qisha was working on this project with my colleague. I think that's very interesting topic. Probably just to connect between my presentation and Qisha's point. I think that the last message Qisha mentioned was very important. We shouldn't only talk about how to cope with the just energy transition, but also how to improve the whole system. Then eventually the social protection system can respond to any kind of risks in the future. So in my view, this is a good opportunity for Indonesia to improve the whole system by taking the opportunity of just energy transition. That's one message. The second, more concrete, as Qisha mentioned, fixed-term contractors are currently very vulnerable, even though they work in a formal company. They are informal within formal company, I would say. Like Qisha mentioned, JKP is not provided, even though they become unemployed as a result of the expiry of contract. Companies do not have an incentive in this country to fire them, because if the company fires them, companies are obliged to pay pesangon. A lot of pesangon. Do you know pesangon on Compass, right? It's always on Compass. And so the companies do not have an incentive to terminate their contract, but they will wait until the contract expires. Then the policy gap exists because then the fixed term contract expiry is not covered by JKP. So this is a policy gap between the labor policy, labor law, labor policy on PKWT and the social protection, because these PKWT contractors will not receive any of the benefits. So I think this is one concrete example. The policy gap exists, and then we find the research, and we can push the policy, evidence-based policy discussions in Jakarta. That's how we work also.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Ippei, for the feedback. Yeah. Then we move to the Q&A session. We have two ways. First, if you would like to ask question directly to speaker, please raise your hand and please mention your name. I will call on you to ask the questions. And the second way, we have an online audience as well. You can also put your question in the chat box. Maybe we can show in the screen. Yeah. Maybe I will open for. We have 30 minutes, so if you have I will open for the first round. You have any questions? Yeah, one, please. Three. Other? Okay, two. The third? Any? Okay, just two first. Yeah. But please mention your full name.
Halo Pak dan Ibu, my name is Mirza. I'm an economics student. So I'm from BR2, 44. Okay, so the question is, how can we achieve social protection for informal sectors, workers, or self-employed in Indonesia, and what measures should the government undertake? Because it's highly concerning that middle-income families are only able to access social protection after they fall into poverty. It's very unlikely for them to get the social protection if they are informal sector workers. So how is it the government should do for them? Thank you.
The second.
Okay, hello sir, ma'am. My name is Jeremy and I'm from also my absent number is number 10. Oh wait, surprisingly my question is quite similar with my friend here. I was talking about informal sector too, but I'm specifically talking about SMSEs in Indonesia because if I look back at like slide 2 or slide 3, I forgot. Most of micro businesses in Indonesia is for social protection is voluntarily or not eligible for social protection. And for my question is, how can is there any perfect scheme or how do we create a scheme for social protection for SMSEs in Indonesia, considering their scale of businesses? Thank you.
Okay. Is there any question from student? From my class, please. Okay, good.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ippei, Tsuruga, and Qisha, and Pak Pugo. So from AR class, I'm Dimas Pertama. So I want to ask some question. I mean, we know that it's pretty clear that Indonesia has come a long way providing social protection with program like BPJS Kesehatan, covering over 270 million people. Program like PKH also helping millions of low-income families, of course. But here's the question: how does the risk of moral hazard, like people becoming too dependent on aid or misusing the benefits and mess with the fairness, effectiveness, and long-term sustainability of these programs? And what can be done for Indonesian government to fix these issues without hurting those who really need the program, like the really the first beneficiaries, of course, the program itself. I think it is my question. Thank you.
Okay. The first question from Mirza on the how we can cover the, I think it's for the informal sector, right? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I will give you opportunity to Ippei. I think the Jeremy also covers the same question because the informal sectors and the small and medium company also not covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How the government can cover workers in informal economy? Okay. There are many ways. There is no one solution. For example, let's take one example on pension. Brunei, Dar es Salaam, neighboring country, and Timor-Leste the government use the tax money to pay all citizens above the age 60 pension. Coverage is 100%. It doesn't matter formal, informal in this case. This is one solution. But they can do it because they have a lot of cash inflow to the government, revenue, tax revenues from mineral resources, natural resources. Probably this is not the option for Indonesia. I don't know. It depends on the fiscal space. Another option is, of course, to take a similar approach to JKN. In JKN, the coverage is very high, right? At about 80% of populations are covered actively. 20% of population is still not paying contributions if they lose the government subsidies. But with I think the local government and the central governments are paying contribution subsidies for, I think, 150 million people. And there are no division between informal or formal. I don't know how they target though. But this is one, I think, message. The jump source alone cannot extend coverage to everyone. But somehow we need to find the formula to combine Bansos and jump source to fill the gap. That's more conceptual, but this is one conceptual response to your question. And I mean, if you're more interested in the ILO's recommendations, we proposed a pension design for Indonesia in our publication in 2023 to Kim and Care. So you can probably have a look at it in more detail. We provided 3 concrete options. And the next question is micro-enterprise.
Yeah, micro-enterprise.
Okay. Yes, I think it's very important questions. In general, in the world, any countries fail to extend social security coverage if they apply voluntary coverage. So from my point of view, it is very important for the government to make enterprise mandatory to register their employees as much as they can. If they have options, they will not pay contributions. They register because it will cost money. However, as you may know, of course, micro-enterprises have difficulties in cash flow, right? They may have a limited fiscal space, budget. So the common approach in many countries is gradually to reduce the threshold of the division between micro or small. Mm-hmm. So it depends on the definition, right? Many countries use the number of employees to define micro, small, medium. So they gradually reduce. Okay, in 5 years' time, all companies who employ 100 employees must contribute to this fund. But then 10 years' time, we will apply mandatory coverage to those companies who employed 50 instead of 100. So in this way, the mandatory coverages will gradually extend it. Do you get my point? To gradually adjust the threshold of the definition of micro, small, to apply mandatory coverage. This is how other countries do. But the important message here is that the government will have to tell companies and workers and the public far in advance, like 5-year plan. 5 years later, we will do this. 10 years later, you will become mandatory. 15 years later, you may become mandatory. Then these companies can be ready to do it. But I think, unfortunately, here, the tendency is that new policies applies immediately, in many cases. So I don't know what is the best formula in Indonesia, but other countries, the gradual extension is very common.
Maybe I would like to add on that. So just to give you the context of Indonesia, it's not that there is no social security scheme or social protection scheme for informal workers or the SMSEs. There are, but the design is different. So when you work for a company, for a UGM, for example, the company, UGM, they are obliged, it's mandatory for UGM or the company to register you with the BPJS. But if you do not have a fixed employer, you guys Gen Z, you like to be freelancers, there's no fixed employers. You have multiple employers. You're freelancers in company A, B, C. Or if you're self-employed, you own the small medium enterprises, micro small medium enterprises. You own a business. You own Cafe Nero, for example. You are the one who should voluntarily register yourself to the scheme because you are the employer. Or in this case of freelancer, you do not have a fixed employer. So far the design is that there is no obligatory for any of the employer to register you. So the design is different. The design of membership and registration is different. But Social Security is designed to be universal. But again, by regulation, out of 2 BPJS, Kesehatan and Ketenagakerjaan, the Health BPJS and Health and Workers BPJS, by law, only the Kesehatan that's been set as universal by law. That's why with JKN, you have PBI and non-PBI. Non-PBI is just the, we all, unless you are poor, you have to pay your own contribution for the health insurance. But if you're poor, the government will subsidy you. That's why Ippei showed him in his slides that JKN is partly social assistance. I think I also delivered this in the class. But that's not the case so far with the workers BPJS. With the workers BPJS, although the insurance itself, you can apply for insurance yourself, like this workers insurance, right? Because anyone can apply as long as you meet the criteria. But then, depending on the status of work, this is where the registration design is different. If you work for a company, you have a fixed company, one company, that company automatically must register you. But if you're a freelancer or if you open your own business as self-employed, then you need to register yourself because you're part of the category of BPU. Bukan penerima upah. Or if you're just working in a construction, there's also another scheme. So the difference is how you register and what are the programs that can cover you. PU, or the wage earner workers, covered everything until JKP. JKK, JKM, kecelakaan kerja, kematian, hari tua, pension, and kehilangan pekerjaan. But with BPU, it's only 3 schemes. JKK, JKM, JHT. Right, Ippei? JKK, JKM, JKP. That's for BPU. So again, the status of work will then determine what programs can cover you. Now, the challenge is first and foremost is the coverage. Even for the PU, who's by design is compulsory for the firms to register you with BPJS, our data showed that, I forgot, maybe Rania can help me in Zoom, but it's not 100%. I mean, for the PU workers in Sakarnas, the data that, so we compare the BPJS active membership data with the Sakarnas data, and it's not 100% of PU workers or wage earner workers covered by the BPJS. For the BPU, the freelancer self-employed is even lower. I think I remember it's only covered like 13% out of our informal workers. So it's not that there is no current scheme, but the challenge is to make the current scheme more effective. And then with the options that Ippei gave you, like, yeah, to really cover those who actually needs to be covered. Because again, with the BPJS Ketenagakerjaan, there's no compulsory yet that it has to be universal. So one example, so when I was hired by Bappenas, for example, they cannot pay my salary as even if I wasn't a civil servant, I was just like an external collaborators, but they cannot pay my salary unless I have BPJS Kesehatan. So I need to have BPJS Kesehatan number, but they never ask for my BPJS Ketenagakerjaan number. Meaning, this scheme has been integrated with other policies that makes you must comply with the program of the government, that the government wants BPJS Kesehatan to be universal, so they make a way that it has to be universal. Yeah, the same thing with STNK. If it's you don't pay the tax for STNK after 2 years, then the government there's a plan that your motorcycle or your car can be retrieved by the government. So something like that, but it's not yet within the BPJS Ketenagakerjaan. So there's been the scheme, but the coverage and the design of the coverage needs to be improved to really kind of hit the target. And again, different with social assistance. Yeah, social assistance is targeted by the government. It must be targeted for the poor. But security is supposed to cover everyone. Security insurance is supposed to cover everyone. Okay, maybe you want a moral hazard thing?
Okay, I think Ippei and Qisha already covered but I want to highlight that there is a trade-off, right? That whether we are, I think all covered if you become a government official, right? Government official, military, you cover with all of the protections, but you are less freedom. I mean, independence and. But if you are now, I think Gen Z like for the independence, like the become a freelance, building startups, but you are less covered, and you have to think more. But I think the importance now that the students know what you expect when you in the job markets, make sure that you are protected. Yeah, in the futures.
Ask for your rights.
As for the your rights. Okay, jumps to the third questions about the risk of moral hazard in our social protections. Maybe Ippei first and sustainability as well.
Sustainability. Okay. Sustainability is the easier one, so I will probably mention this. Actually, by regulations, BPJS TECA programs need to be evaluated every 2 or 3 years by regulation. And I think the government does evaluate each programs every 2 or 3 years according to regulations. However, the problem on sustainability, financial sustainability of BPJS schemes is that the contribution rate has never been adjusted according to the recommendation provided by the evaluation. For example, I can take one example. The jaminan pension regulation was I think adopted in 2015, and the contribution was set at 3% of wage. But the regulation also said it needs to be gradually increased to 8%. And what year is it? 2025 now. And the contribution still remains at 3%. So if this if there is no change in the contribution rate, even though the, let's say, actuarial science, actuarial recommendation, you know actuaries? Probably in the different departments, though.
In
Actuaria.
Actuaria.
It's in mathematics.
Natural sense.
Mathematics. So they are the one who mathematically calculate contribution rate. What would be the best contribution rate to maintain the financial sustainability for, let's say, 100 years for pension? But then, the policy needs to be adjusted in the form of contribution rate. But if that doesn't happen, of course, financial sustainability will be damaged year by year. What will happen? It basically, in case of pension, if the contribution rate doesn't increase today, the costs will be on your shoulder in the future. It will never be reduced. So that's the implication between the current generation, your generation, next generation. That's financial sustainability. It's mathematics. It's not the rocket science. Moral hazard? It depends on what moral hazard you are talking about. Let's take one policy issues. For example, for JKP, when you apply for JKP benefits, you are asked to apply for 5 job applications at least every month, or you have to participate in 1 job interview. That is a good requirement to prevent job seekers from being lazy. See, if they just want to get money, 60% of wage without doing anything, they can just sit at home and playing computer game, and then they collect money, right? But to prevent them from doing this, the BPJS requires them to apply at least 5 times to prevent moral hazard, right? However, the current policy issues, in my view, is that this is a self-reporting mechanism. Other countries, they let's say Hello Work in Japan, ask JKP recipients to come to the office in person because they know some people become lazy and they just submit 5 applications online, even though they are not serious about it. So in Japan, they ask a face-to-face meeting, or sometimes online call, but they show the Zoom link, Zoom on face-to-face, and the job counselors give interview. What did you do last month? Did you really apply for the job? Is that the serious job you wanted to get? You know, this kind of how do you call it? Verification process is also in place. But here it's still self-reporting. So I don't know about the effectiveness of current implementation design. But that's one example of how we could prevent moral hazard.
No, it's funny that I actually had this experience with one of my clients. I forgot whether it was, I think it's one of my clients. So I've been working with Ippei and the ILO for, kind of support this extending the coverage of social protection, especially for the informal workers. So one of the questions was actually, if we broaden or if we extend the coverage, especially for JKM, wouldn't be a moral hazard that people kill each other or just use this scheme? Maybe they watch too many dramas or movies where they use their spouses, life insurance schemes to make money out of it, So yeah, or it's kind of a reason for you if you don't have or like money on the table, you just kill your spouse because you know that they're covered by the death insurance and because you're the next of kin, so you will get the money out of the spouse's life. Yeah, it's been in the dramas and I think in some cases maybe it's true, like it's an extreme moral hazard, and I got that question, so like will it like raise this kind of issue that people will then just use this social protection as a form to make money out of it, and then become a moral hazard, which is not a new theory that you learn about moral hazard. Moral hazard comes when there's a market failure, inefficiency, because the system or the design of the system kind of allows for that moral hazard. And I think what, like most examples in your microeconomics textbook was always about insurance, right? Insurance company. So when you are covered by, or when your car is covered by insurance, you will drive recklessly. That's what being wrote in your textbook, which is, again, like Ippei mentioned, depending on the context. Because the thing with moral hazard is that you also learn how to mitigate the moral hazard. You need to change the system. You need to make like a contract, a condition, like what Ippei mentioned. So it's not just as easy as, I'll just drive recklessly because now I'm covered by car insurance and the car insurance will always pay for me every time I hit another car, for example. Well, again, I believe in every insurance company, they have like investigator team to investigate what's actually happened. So yeah, moral hazard happens due to a market efficiency. You should have learned as well how to mitigate that issues. And when there's market failure due to inefficiency, that's why one of the mitigation should comes from the government. So market failure is mitigated using government intervention. But yeah, when there's a government failure, then you need the market. So that's what we learn, right? So that's actually the practice. So within the social security or social insurance, you actually pay for contribution. So again, like I mentioned about actuarial studies, so it's more like cost and benefit studies. You know that you've been putting money in this risk pooling program, and if anything happened to me, I will be covered by it. But also, if I done something recklessly, I can be investigated before I can get the benefit. So, and that's kind of the importance of intervention by the government to set that conditional or contract that kind of limit the possibility of moral hazard. We might not eliminate 100%, but we know that there are ways to kind of mitigate or limit the possibility of moral hazard. Even in like private insurance companies, they have such things or that investigator thing. But what I would like to also say is that moral hazard does not always happen in insurance. It also happens, it also occurs in social assistance. Because for and foremost, social assistance, you do not pay contribution, right? The government pay the subsidy, PKH. Maybe Pak Wisnu and Zoom have more knowledge about it, but I also learned from Pak Wisnu that actually the outcome or the success story of PKH is when there are less people getting PKH or graduate from receiving PKH, because meaning more people are now better off. But when you're too reliant on government subsidy, that could also be moral hazard. You don't have perhaps the motivation to get out of poverty or extreme poverty, because you know that being poor, you get social assistance. And this is like more like kind of mentality, moral hazard that needs to be kind of addressed if such thing happen. And to kind of you maybe as the future policymakers realize that in terms of social assistance, that also could be moral hazard in terms of being dependent on the program. But actually the success measure of the program is not by how many or what is the extra beneficiaries can be covered by PKH, but actually is by how many can graduate from the social assistance program. So again, you need to kind of have the definition of the design of the program, the moral hazard thing, and then have that outcome measurement that measure the effectiveness and the efficiency of the programs, both social insurance and social assistance. That's in my point of view.
Okay, thank you, Qisha, on and Ippei on the comments on moral hazard and sustainability. In moral hazard, maybe I will add some things related to the moral hazard. I did learn from my works with the Kota Yogyakarta, the city of Yogyakarta. They are, especially for the unconditional cash transfer and Raskin, like rice for the poor. They are some of the beneficiary because this is their comfort zone. I mean, they want to stay poor for a long time, yeah. And we are mapping. They are in the near river, like the river sites in Yogyakarta. There are 2 river sites, big one, and then there are clusters of and they are staying poor for a very long time. So because they are comfort to get that's kind of moral hazard, because if it is in terms of financial sustainability, if they are not moving from the poor, we have to keep paying them, and then I think it's not healthy for fiscal of for the government, right?
Yeah, I also forgot mention about that. The government will always ask about how much do we need to pay for everything.
Yeah.
So even like for like when I proposed that extension of coverage for informal workers or PBI for BPJS Ketenagakerjaan, they always pay how much the state needs to pay, because I mean it's gonna be fiscal burden.
Yeah.
And the fiscal comes from taxes. So it's gonna be coming one way or the other from our money at the end.
Okay, for the sustainability, I will add because I'm in health economist, so I can say on this and BPJS Kesehatan at the beginning, it's all about the design, right? At the beginning, I'm not sure it's self-selection or moral hazard, because you wouldn't you just register to the BPJS Kesehatan or JKN before you going to the hospital. Like it is like, but after that you don't pay the premium or contribution. So like after use, don't pay the contribution, and then we have to pay. Yeah. So the tax, yeah, eventually pay in the end. So it's like a yeah, basically we need to trying to improve our designs, and I think after a decade, like 10 years after JKN, we are trying, but again, Ippei on the actuarial numbers, it doesn't sound like it will be not sustainable in the future. So we have to add the premium, but if we add premium, people will angry. Yeah, that's one of the political decision leadership. Okay, I think do we have any comments in online? No? Qisha is okay to it's okay to end this. Okay. The last question? No, yeah. Yeah. Because if there is one question, people will who asking this. Okay, thank you for Ippei and Qisha for the presentations today, and thank you for the participant for Micro-Economica series talk. Thank you for all committee and prepare this meeting. It's such a pleasure to moderating this lively public discussion. I hope we can see you again in another event. Have a nice day, and I give back to the MC, please.